Marcus Ely here for Status Coup, and we're in Iowa City at the Bernie Sanders rally, and I'm here with Andrew Osborne. Andrew, can you tell me a little bit about what brought you out to see Senator Bernie Sanders today?
Well, I've supported Bernie for this campaign and his previous campaign in 2016. I've seen him once in a smaller venue, and I just wanted to come out to one of his bigger events to come see how these events work.
All right. So we saw the polls from the recent the Des Moines Register. Des Moines Register has predicted accurately the last six Democratic nominees with their polls, and of course Bernie's leading in those polls. CNN is pretending like I don't know if you've seen the tweets, but CNN is pretending like he's not leading and it's a close race. He is outside of the margin of error, and the clear leader. How does this make you feel as somebody who saw what happened in 2016 and a current Bernie supporter to see the mainstream media reporting the way that they're reporting?
Yeah, I'm certainly not appreciative of the fact that he doesn't really get the attention that he deserves in the media. But I look back to 2016 and I see how the media kind of did the same thing for Donald Trump. And while they're obviously completely different people with completely different messages, Bernie's obviously not a candidate of hate. But I see the way the media treated Donald Trump in 2016 and how that kind of backfired on them. I'm kind of hopeful that has the same effect this time around.
There is a tad difference. They covered, you know what I mean, empty podiums and gave Donald Trump a gang of free media and almost ignored Bernie before. But this time, yeah, they seem to be ignoring and disparaging him as well.
Yeah, I think the disparaging effect is going to play the biggest role in having that backfire effect. But yeah, I'm glad to see that people are picking up on his message, despite the fact that he's not getting the same coverage as some of the more mainstream candidates.
And then, as somebody who supported the senator in 2016, you look at the issue specifically of Medicare for all. We saw Elizabeth Warren triangulate, fall in the polls. We saw Kamala Harris triangulate, fall in the polls, and eventually drop out. We saw Andrew Yang triangulate, fall in the polls. The second anybody backs away from Medicare for all, which was Bernie's linchpin issue in 2016, they seem to fall in the polls immediately, and the establishment is scrambling to try to figure out what they can do to stop Medicare for all. But it seems very clear that this is something that the people want. How do you feel as a voter about the specific issue, Medicare for all?
Well, I think it's probably debatably the most important issue of this campaign because it's an issue that people were very passionate about in 2016. It's kind of the policy position that candidates tried to start out with in 2020. All these other major candidates said, yes, we're for Medicare for all. And then as campaigns have chugged along here, they've started to step away from that because it's not popular in the establishment in DC to say that you're for Medicare for all, despite whether or not the people support it. I think that's one position that Bernie has held steady on over years. And I think people see that. People are not stupid. They see that he's been consistent, and these other candidates are kind of trying to figure out what will poll best. And he's not concerned with that. So I think that's a position or a policy that's really important, and I think people are recognizing that.
So what are the specific issues other than Medicare for all that have you supporting Bernie right now?
Definitely in terms of like green policy. You hear about the Green New Deal, and we hear from climate scientists that this is a very important issue, and no other candidate has a plan that addresses the climate issues to the extent that scientists recommend we address them at. And I think Bernie is the only candidate that seems to value climate policy. So I think that's a really important issue to address, and the fact that he's the only candidate that addresses that is really important.
Well, some people wouldn't say that he's the only one that addresses it, but he definitely addresses it the best. And the Sunrise Movement even agrees with you on that because they recently endorsed him, and that's the biggest climate activist movement that there is right now, at least in America. Now, also talking about climate change, the urgency of it, we've recently seen the fires in Australia, and the smoke from the fires is even showing up in Chile now. So what do you think it's going to take? Like, President Sanders clearly is not going to be enough because, you know what I mean, you're going to have the Democratic establishment, you're going to have the Republicans to fight against. But what is it going to take for humanity to be able to survive this existential threat, do you think?
Well, yeah, I think it obviously is going to take a lot more than just having the right president in place. And I think that's another area where Bernie comes out ahead of other candidates because he's very focused on a grassroots movement, not just about propelling his own candidacy, but about starting a left wing movement from the ground up. And if you're going to change policy in a meaningful way, you have to change all facets of the government. All like you have to change the House, you have to change the Senate. You have to make a lot of progress in a lot of different areas. And I really like that Bernie is focused on getting people involved politically. And I think that's what you need to do to make any meaningful change in the climate. And that's kind of why I say like no other candidate has really addressed the climate because if you're talking about incremental change, that's not enough to do anything. It doesn't matter. You're going to have the same end result whether or not you slow it down by 2 to 4 years or whatever. I think he's the only candidate that has a chance at actually making a difference for the environment.
You just watched Status Coup's In the Field coverage with me live on the ground from Iowa. We can't do this without your support, so make sure to like, share, subscribe, and become a member at statuscoup.com.